I'm Jake and welcome back to my lounge. Today's video, I want to focus on almost kind of the driving force of why I'm into vinyl. Vinyl offers the unique opportunity to discover music that just often doesn't get any attention otherwise. They've been recording and music and putting it on vinyl for decades and decades. I was about to throw out a number and I realized I'm not exactly sure. Is it 100 years? It might be pretty close to that. And so there's this massive catalog of music that can still be discovered, in many cases, only through a record. And so as I've been paying more attention to stuff like that, I've come across a few records, and I think I've got about 11 here. We're going to call this series Mind Melters. Stuff that just made you stop and go, what is this? Why haven't I ever heard of this before? And I want more. And so I'm going to go through each one of these one by one, give a little bit of backstory on that. And then I want to know what your mind melters are. I want to hear more about that. So let's get started. These are in no particular order. I just kind of grabbed them and stuck them together. So if you've seen some of my other videos as I'm sitting here, this album is very visible right here in the wall, and I've pulled this down. So Mink DeVille. The album is Cabretta. So I have XM radio, and one of the channels I listen to most often is Tom Petty. Of course, I really like Tom Petty, and I'm going to do a highlight on him eventually. But one of the reasons I like that channel is they play so many different songs. Tom recorded many shows before his death. I can't remember how many. And they're continually playing those shows where he would pull from records from his personal collection. And the song Gunslinger from this album was played one time, and it just caught my attention. I'm like, God. And they had this graphic on there on my screen in my car, and I took a picture with my phone. I'm like, I got to remember who this was. And eventually I had Lavender Vinyl on 25th Street in Ogden order me this copy. As you see, it's got that punch hole in there, which means it would have been sent back to the distribution company because it didn't sell originally. I'm not going to go through the whole story with Mink DeVille, and I believe he only used this name this one time on this album. Just reading through here. He's got a fantastic story, and I'm not going to take all the time on that, but I ordered this album. It's 70s rock at its finest. This was released in 1977. The whole dang album is a riot, and since then I've seen a couple other songs played on Tom Petty's channel from this album. If you like 70s era New York rock, get this album. I've listened to it many times. I love it. I do a rotation on the wall with different albums I'm really big on, or sometimes it's just for a aesthetic reason or whatever, and that's been on there for a while. Plus, it's also in fantastic condition, so I want to keep it in condition. Okay, so speaking of New York rock, and this was actually from the 80s, but Lou Reed. Lou Reed was never a real big deal for me. I'd hear bits and pieces and just didn't really click. So, as a matter of fact, and I can't remember if this was Tom Petty. I think a lot of these albums actually might be triggered from listening to Tom Petty's channel. But Dirty Boulevard played, and it was just made me stop and say, what is this song? It's so interesting. It's so bizarre, and I'm trying to listen to the lyrics, and I thought, I've got to figure that Dirty Boulevard song out, and where does it come from? Well, this is where it comes from. We could spend a whole lot of time on this album. I believe Lou Reed wrote this about what he was seeing going on in New York. AIDS was ravaging the communities in New York. I think that was a part of this. He actually writes a letter in here. Oh, where was he? Shoot. Oh, Here it is, right here, right on the back. This album was recorded and mixed at Media Sound Studios B, New York City, in essentially the order you have it here. It's meant to be listened to in one 58-minute, 14-song sitting as though it were a book or a movie. Freaking love that. I love how he expresses that. It's in very clear, not poetic language. And he's right. I freaking love this entire album. You know, for me, this was one that took a couple of times to listen through. Oh, and actually, you know, this is the lyric sheet. Then you've got Halloween Parade, which is also fantastic, but that's regarding AIDS there. So that's where I would have picked that up. You know, there's also the sound quality on this vinyl is unbelievable. I love the way the guitar sound, the percussion sounds. You know, and this is an album that kind of flimsy vinyl, honestly. Certainly not 180 gram or anything, but it sounds awesome. It's in tremendous shape. I think I tracked this one down. It was a little challenging to get. I think I tracked this one down on Discogs. I've picked up a few other Lou Reed albums. I might do a highlight on him and get a little bit more in depth, but Dirty Boulevard, XM Radio. Some of these albums I've just discovered by, as Bob Ross says, a happy accident and just got lucky. Others I've kind of been directed to. So this gets a lot of discussion in the vinyl forums. You know, you'd heard of Alan Parsons' project. I couldn't even tell you what any commercial success, radio play is what I'm referring to. But this kept on getting brought up. And I was down again at my record store on 25th Street in Ogden, and this copy was sitting there. Perfect shape. I don't know if it's an original, may not be. It's just in excellent condition. Said, all right, what the heck? Let's give this a go. Everybody talks about it, and it was pretty cheap too. I think I got it for $10 or something like that. Holy freaking crap! It blew my mind. Now the first go through, I really didn't know what to expect. I had no idea what the genre was going to be. No idea. I've listened to this so many times. I've dreamt about it. It's gotten into my subconscious. I can't say enough good things about it. It is so much fun. It's so interesting, and just makes you wonder, where does this stuff come from? I've only listened to a little bit more of what he has to offer, but this iRobot that gets a lot of talk in the vinyl community is fantastic. So much fun to listen to, and you probably have experienced on some of those albums where the first time you're not so sure about it, and then after that second or third time, it's just in your blood. You just fall in love with it. We're pretty big Pink Floyd fans. We've seen Roger Waters play. I was just thinking about which tour that was, but it was probably 13 years ago. We went down to Las Vegas to see him. Actually had tickets to see Roger Waters in Salt Lake last year in September. COVID happened. All the concerts got shut down, and our tickets were refunded. One of the reasons I'm bringing this album up is I was looking for something to buy for my brother-in-law, Chris, who is probably the biggest Pink Floyd fan I know, and just was trying to figure out which record to buy him for his birthday. Landed back on Roger Waters' website for some reason, and this was for sale. So the music we're all pretty familiar with. This is the Us and Them tour from 2018, I believe. I think it was like $60. I can't remember, something like that. It wasn't too bad. There's 3 albums on here, really high quality. The reason I'm including it in the mix, though, is the sound quality. The bass. This is a live concert recording, and man, the professionals that were involved in producing this record, it just blows me away. You wouldn't expect that from a concert. And there's just something about the bass that doesn't make sense. I mean, it's so crisp and so powerful. If you like Pink Floyd, Final Cut would be another good example of just this profound room-filling bass that they know how to produce. All right, okay, so back to XM Radio, Tom Petty. Every Friday night, David Frick hosts a show. And he's been a journalist, I believe, for Rolling Stones and involved in the music scene for decades. Does a fantastic show. And he was, so this is a few years ago, it was talking about how Mike Campbell of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers fame helped produce this album with Marty Stewart. And it was just on that recommendation alone, I said, well, I've got to go ahead and pick up this album. This is an unbelievable album. It really sets you in such a mood. You've got to listen to the whole thing. It all blends together so well. As luck would have it, when shortly after I got this album, Marty Stewart and his fabulous superlatives came through town. One of my favorite live music venues, the State Room on State Street in Salt Lake City, which has sadly, of course, been closed up for the better part of a year, came to play there. I think it's a 300-person venue. I was standing almost face-to-face. This band puts on such an incredible performance. They harmonize like you just don't see anymore, and they just killed it. I had tickets to see him again in Nevada, just on a border town, about an hour and a half from where I live, and then COVID shut that down. Absolutely incredible. You've got to check that out. You can see some of the influence of Mike Campbell, and then on a recent album of his, actually, you kind of see that flavor show up again. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, so this is kind of a fun one. I try and stay away from greatest hits albums for the most part. They kind of cherry pick your more radio favorite songs. But the reason I bought this, I was down in my record store, and a week or two previously, my wife had mentioned, I think it was, I don't know if it was El Paso, which is probably his biggest, most well-known hit, was playing, and she really liked that Mexican influence, the guitar in the song, and just commented on it. So as I'm flipping through the bins, this pops up, and I see, you know, that's actually in pretty good shape. It was cheap. It's a 2-album set, 2 records in there. And I thought, oh, what the heck, can't go wrong. Let's go ahead and check this out. Outside of his more commercial hits, I didn't really know anything about Marty Robbins, and we came home and put this thing on. Marty Robbins kicks ass. This is incredible music. Very much the soul of country through the 60s and 70s. All of that flavor. You do have that Spanish-Mexican influence in a lot of the songs. He rocks it, very similar to Elvis. And then one song in particular, I'd never heard of this song before, Don't Worry. We were down here actually playing games as a family, running this record through, really enjoying it. And then Don't Worry comes on. And it's got this, what I've later found out, there was a malfunctioning piece of equipment with this guitar solo in the middle of this really bizarre sound. And it played through, and we just stopped and were like, wait, what the heck was that? Never even heard of this song before. Played through several more times and just absolutely fell in love with Marty Robbins. Had no idea. I'm going to get some more Marty Robbins. I want to see what else he's got out there. But this greatest hits was fantastic, and I'm really glad that I bought it. All right. Okay. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Murder Ballads. A really dark and heavy album. I was in my record store thumbing through the bins, and they're playing this, as it turns out, Nick Cave. There was something very familiar about it, but I couldn't pinpoint it. It's not a Neil Young or it's not a Bob Dylan. It's somewhere in that space. And I couldn't pick it out. And I said, well, who is this? Oh, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. who the heck is that? And it led to the purchase of this album. And I've got another one as well, but this one just is what sucked me in. You've got Henry Lee, which is a duet with PJ Harvey, who used to be, a romantic interest with Nick Cave. Just, blew me away. It was just, there's such a depth to the music, and then the lyrics are quite interesting and strange and gruesome. You've got Kylie Minogue, Where the Wild Roses Grow. Everything deals with death on this album. Crow Jane, and then Death Is Not the End. Shane MacGowan is in there, and a few other artists. Nick Cave's been around for a long time, just dropped another album recently. I haven't gotten that, but as I researched online, huge artist, a big deal. I can't off the top of my head think, in fact, as I'm looking at the back here, and members of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, I'm going to have to look a little bit deeper in that. Which one are they on there? That one kind of hits a little close to home. Unbelievable, blew my mind. Why hadn't I heard of Nick Cave until just a couple of months ago? It doesn't make any sense. International star, big band. Okay, this is another one, Peter Gabriel. This is his first album once he left Genesis. Everybody knows Peter Gabriel. I grew up in the 80s, Sledgehammer, and In Your Eyes. Like, you knew the big radio stuff. It didn't really tell me, hearing those songs, that I want to know more about this guy. He just seemed like a pop star. Okay, big deal. Sledgehammer got played to death growing up. It wasn't even on my radar. My brother-in-law Chris, big deal in vinyl community as well, says, hey, check this out. All right. Knew nothing about it. Throw it on. Side one just absolutely blew me away. And the first song is Moribund the Burgermeister. It is a dark, twisted story that you've got to check out. You just have to check it out for yourself. And I just can't stop listening to it. It just blew me away. There's so much going on here. And side two has some really good stuff on there as well. There's a real bluesy song. There is no theme to the style of music. It's a little bit of everything. It just bounces all over the place. So much going on in Peter Gabriel's head. And this came out, gosh, I think So came out in 1986. So this came out almost 9 years before his big stuff came out. I had no idea. I had no idea I was going to be such a fan of that album. Okay. I have no idea why. I was thumbing through the bins at Lavender again. Every once in a while you'll get somebody drop off their collection, and Elvis, of course, is huge. Don't need to talk about how big of a deal Elvis is. But there's a billion albums. What do you even do? How am I supposed to become a fan when there's so much to choose from? This was luck of the draw. It's got Fool on which is the first song. I absolutely love it. It's impossible. Just the song styles. This is sequin suit Elvis. You just feel like you're in some concert hall in Las Vegas, and he's just giving it the business. He covers Bob Dylan's Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. It's fantastic. Freaking love this album. Blew me away. I'm a fan. Now I just got to figure out which other albums I'm going to get. I've got Christmas albums, which are... I'm going to do a special episode on Christmas albums. I've got a nice collection of really cool stuff, Elvis being one of them, and it's fantastic. You run across a lot of his soundtrack excuse me, albums from his movies. Movie Elvis is a little tough for me to swallow, so I'm not going to pursue that too much. Okay, now this one. This is one of my absolute favorite albums. So I'm going to reference Lavender a ton because I spent a lot of time there and a lot of good money for some good records. But 25th Street has a tremendous history to it. And there used to be a club that burnt down in the 60s called Porters and Waiters. There's a tremendous train history, railroad history through Ogden and 25th Street. So anyways, there were a lot of very important artists that traveled, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, and Count Basie, who would stop and perform at this club. And I thought, you know, I should buy a couple of albums from these artists that came into Ogden in the very location where I am buying records. Now the building Lavender's in is a modern building. It was built in the 90s, but thumbing through the bins and I see this, the Count Basie Trio. Okay, it's got his name on it, good enough for me. Let's just take off. And it sat in my room for quite a while, in my lounge, and I just didn't listen to it. I just wanted to have a piece of history, so to speak. I've absolutely loved this. I've shared it with others. They absolutely love it. It's jazzy, it's bluesy. It's just fantastic. The whole thing, front to back, is wonderful. Just got a lucky pick. And I've acquired some other Count Basie, but this was the one that just started me off. I freaking love it. I've been trying to really take a deep dive into the jazz world. It's not an easy journey. I've got an open mind, but some of the stuff that's been highly recommended has been very difficult for me to digest. But this, love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, here's my last one. Can't say Lavender enough. But this was actually a sealed copy, anthology, it's the greatest hits, with the Temptations. Now, you know the big things that got a lot of radio play, like My Girl and all that. Where was I? I can't remember where it was, but I'm sure it was on XM radio somewhere. But the song Psychedelic Shack came on. And it blew my mind. I'd never heard of this song. I didn't know. And I was like, who is singing this song? And it was something that I had to write down to remember later. And I mean, they've got a lot of music on there. There's 3 records in here. You can see here. It was a sealed album, so I don't know. I mean, this was released in '73. I don't know if it's truly from 1973. I hadn't researched it that closely, but man, the Temptations kick some ass. They really put the hurt on it. It is good. They also, what's great to see is, I mean, they had a lot of things to say as well about what was going on in their world and within the Black community. Don't let the Joneses get you down. I mean, they actually talk about financial responsibility in this song, and then Ball of Confusion, which is a great song that could apply a lot to the political world today. This is funky, it rocks, it kicks, blew my mind. Listened to this quite a bit when we're playing pool with my buddy Chad. We just love it, and I'll listen to it sometimes by myself. Psychedelic Shack, though, you got to check that out. Fantastic album, blew my mind. So there's a few samples as I continue to collect albums that blow my mind, either through just luck or through recommendations. We'll do some more of these, but I want to hear what is blowing your mind, so maybe it can blow my mind too.